Welcome back to the second and almost certainly superior to the first section
Wow. It's a
of
tall
the
bar.
DMZ America podcast for Wednesday, April 26th. Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
Scott Stantis coming to you from the right.
So, Scott, there was a
Yes.
little news in the media earlier this week.
Was there?
Yeah, a little bit. Tucker Carlson, the top-rated Fox News host, was unceremoniously, well, I guess slightly ceremoniously disposed of by Fox. He was let go. It was obviously a firing. Trump said that he didn't know if it was a firing or a quitting, but had a quitting occurred, Tucker almost certainly would have been allowed to say goodbye to his audience. Instead, his last broadcast was Friday, and he was teasing that he'd be back on the air on Monday. So obviously, it was unexpected to him. Fox issued the usual cut and paste. We wish you all the best in all of your future endeavors, which will have nothing to do with us. Thank fucking God statement. And then a few hours later, CNN sacked the beleaguered and bedraggled Don Lemon, who had been
Not so beloved.
had been demoted to the morning show, which is kind of funny that that's a demotion because in many ways that's a very high profile job. But obviously it involves getting up at ungodly o'clock every day, and it's not exactly a great lifestyle choice for you. And he didn't want the job, more to the point. So anyway, yeah. So can we agree that these were both firings?
Oh God,
Tucker
yes.
didn't
No,
quit?
I mean you've. I mean, I've known so many radio friends who they said, "Okay, I'm Scott Stantis, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow." And the management standing at the window outside the studio going, "Not so fast." They really were like they were GONE. I use your story a lot because I think it's so fucking brilliant. When you were let go by KTLA. KFI in Los Angeles, and they actually let you have a goodbye show, farewell show.
Well, I think they trusted me. The program director, David G. Hall, and I had a very good rapport. And I mean, look, people think I'm a hothead. I'm really not. You can
Ted Theodore, my dear friend. You did. I mean, your last show, you did an entire segment in French.
Well, it was funny.
I'm sorry. That's a big fat fuck you. I mean, it's brilliant and I love it. It's my favorite last show story in the history of last shows, just because I can imagine driving around LA. I lived in LA for years and listened to, I mean, talk radio was one of the options that you listen to because, top 40 play the same songs over and over. So you listen to talk and you just turn in and Ted Rall. And what do you hear?
Well, as you know, there's a vast French-speaking population in Southern California, and I felt like it was important to serve them.
Well, they were certainly, someone was served. But yeah, so I can see not giving them their final because especially someone like Tucker Carlson would have been a bitch about it. He just would have been a turd.
You really think he would have been a loose cannon?
Oh yeah. Because again, this is a guy who's in line for the Swanson family fortune. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't do this. So he can tell you to go fuck yourself and be just fine.
Right. That's true.
And he would have, I think he probably would have, he would have, said, the Murdochs are just, being controlled by the woke crowd and all sorts of weirdness. I mean,
well, why do you think
a shorter answer to your
how and why do you think this happened?
I think he got to the point where, first of all, he cost the network $750 million. That's not chump change to anybody. I mean,
well, he didn't really cause it as much as most of the other people on the network, right? I mean, he expressed on air some serious reservations about the idea that Dominion or Smartastic voting machines had been used to throw the election to Joe Biden. If anything, what was really interesting is that Dominion in their filing papers actually pointed to Tucker and said, like, not all Fox hosts were on board with these conspiracy theories. Tucker wasn't, and the other hosts should have been, they were aware because they could have been aware of Tucker, who was their top rated host.
Right, but I'm assuming they were alluding to the emails that Tucker had sent back and forth. But Tucker also, this is how weird MAGA Nation is, and I'm just harkening back to our past segment. But real quick, when he said that, how how fucking stupid Donald Trump is, and that still doesn't seem to bother them.
I don't think it's so weird. I think it's sort of like analogous to how I used to support Senator Ted Kennedy, despite, let's just say his unfortunate behavior toward women, because I didn't care about that stuff. I was like, this is a warrior. We need warriors. He votes the right way. He's a good debater in the Senate. That's all I care about. I think the MAGA Nation, they don't care. Like for example, the evangelical Christians who support Trump, they don't care about the fact that he fucks porn stars. They're like, he's just doing God's work because he supports what we want. And everybody just wants that. They just want someone who supports their side. They don't care about the personal hypocrisies. And for them, the fact that Tucker doesn't believe it in some ways makes him even better, because even though he doesn't believe it, he says it. And that's what matters.
Wow. Well, that's sad. That's like, the old adage, Americans don't care what you think, they care what you do. But the French don't care what you do, they care what you think.
Yeah.
So we're becoming France, is what I'm hearing.
Well, or we're becoming more American, maybe.
Ooh, that's
yeah, no, I mean, it's about, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because that's right. I mean, it's like sort of existentialism was the opposite of that, right? The French philosophy, Sartre. There, everybody's judged entirely by their actions, and what you think does not matter. But I think this is I mean, I think that there may have been, and we talked about this offline, a secret protocol, like when Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union had a non-aggression pact leading up to World War II, where both sides agreed not to attack one another because they were both basically playing for time as they were getting ready to attack one another. And there was a secret protocol, a side agreement that was not released. And that involved the partition of Poland, where Poland was, both sides agreed to divvy up Poland in September of 1939. Before that. And they did quickly, they partitioned it. I think there's a strong chance that there was a secret agreement. It's all secret, but a really, really secret agreement between Dominion and Fox to get rid of Tucker. I think it was like, we want money and we want an apology. And Fox said, we're not going to give you an apology, but we could give you Tucker's head on a plate. And
maybe, but this seems to be very much on brand with Murdoch. He did it with O'Reilly.
O'Reilly did something wrong. I mean, he was caught making gross phone calls to women staffers. There was sexual harassment of all kinds. I mean, he couldn't stay. He had embarrassed himself and the network. I mean, Tucker hadn't done that. He had acquitted himself very well on the network. I mean, I don't know how many people listening to us have ever seen Tucker Carlson, but his show was super interesting. It was entertaining, and it was, I gotta say, the most intellectual talk. His mien is so intellectual and so contrarian. The only other figure on cable news who compares in terms of that sort of geeky approach to commentary is Rachel Maddow, who was a Rhodes Scholar.
And we talked about this on your radio program the other day, and your host Manila listed the things that Tucker has talked about that frankly are kind of in the Ted Rall wheelhouse, serious and profound questioning of the role of America in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I'm trying to think I'm drawing a blank on the rest of the list, but it was pretty much, he was the vaccine masks, questioning masks and stuff. And that was, I mean, I know a lot of people hate to hear this, but I think that's a legitimate thing to ask. Questions are always legitimate things to ask. And frankly, it turns out that masks were useless. They were useless in 1918. They were useless this time. Yeah. They're useless. Unless you're sick. Unless you actually are showing symptoms, then you don't you don't sneeze and cough and hurl your spittle all over the place. Past that, then it looks like masks just didn't do a hell of a lot.
No, I mean, probably, I mean, look, I don't think they were right for the right reason, but right is right, whether you're right for the right reason or not. And I think conservatives were right about COVID, not the part about not getting vaccinated. I'm the most vaccinated man in America, but I have eight. I have eight. That's right. That's
Holy
right.
shit. 8?
That's right. That's right. I'll put my fucking vax cards up against anyone's, but definitely they
But
were
why
right
would you?
about how to we should have handled this. We should have isolated the elderly, people with respiratory diseases and pre-existing conditions, done everything we could to protect them, and everyone else should have just led their normal lives and let the thing spread, because we are not Singapore, where you can get 98% of the population to vaccinate and achieve herd immunity. Americans are just, too disobedient. We're scoundrels. Can't
We're
do it.
Clovis. We're Clovis.
Yeah, Clovis does what he wants. He lives his own life.
That's right. He lives his best life, but he lives his own life too.
I'm not sure it's really his best life. His best life was when he was an outdoor cat. He was killing like everything.
I know cats are bizarre. I don't know why you like them, but anyway.
Well, dogs kill too.
So Don, okay, so let's go to Don Lemon real quick, which I think you're right. Clearly CNN thought that this dump on top of, behind the Tucker Carlson dump would get no attention.
And that's what they wanted, because Don Lemon is black and gay, and they were worried about blowback.
Well, I don't blame him. And and Don Lemon, I've mentioned this before on this podcast and on your show. I knew him very briefly when he like I said, he had a cup of coffee in Birmingham on his way up the ladder. And obviously smart guy, obviously talented, obviously ambitious. But when they kicked him over to, like you mentioned, when they kicked him over to morning, it just seems to me he should have just taken a big gulp, eaten a big bowl of shut the fuck up and done his job, and he would have been fine. But
like Brian Williams did when he got that demotion from NBC Nightly News to MSNBC 11 p.m. No one the fuck is watching. More security guards get their news from NBC late night than any other source.
I still have to say the creepiest story of all the creepy stories that have come out about media people lately is the Williams button to shut and lock the door.
Oh God!
At his desk. You've heard of
this,
right?
Was that him?
Yeah.
I thought that was someone else.
No, I thought that was Brian Williams. Am I?
No, I don't think so. I think no. Let's not slag Brian Williams, who, after all, has suffered so much from coming under heavy fire in many war zones. Remember, that's what got him in trouble.
Yeah.
No, God, who was it? It was, oh God, it's the guy he's hiding out on Long Island, in the Hamptons. It's, I can't believe we've forgotten his name. That's how fast people fade from public.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't Brian Williams, then you're right.
No.
Who the hell was it? Because he had the button. And I'm
looking that up. Right.
What are you going to type in?
Button, desk, sexual harassment, TV host. What do we got? Matt Lauer comes right up.
Lauer. Okay, yeah, Today Show guy with the weirdly buzzed head, which I always thought was a weird look.
Architectural Digest says Matt Lauer wasn't the only one with a button under his desk at NBC.
What?
That's what it says. Yeah. Eric Wemple.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. On the creepometer, could you imagine you're out of college, you're 21, 22 years old, and Matt Lauer calls you to, he needs something, probably a cup of coffee. And you walk in and says, yes, Mr. Lauer. And all of a sudden the door, click.
Well, it's and then he's like, sort of like, Scott, thanks for coming in. Can you stand a little bit to your left? No, your other left. A little bit right there. And then 10 seconds later, you're in a tank full of sharks.
God, it's just, oh man. Anyway, so going out so Don Lemon, I think, got to be a prima donna. People hated him there. The reports coming out of CNN is that he was his own worst enemy near the end. And I can see where, you've got literally tens of millions, it's cable news, probably 2, 4, 5 million people a night watching you. Right. Mm. And you're surrounded by staff that, oh, you're great, Don. You're the best. You're amazing. Any sexual proclivity you might have is fed without question. Any other appetites are, sated. It must be a
cheese
weird.
danishes,
What?
steak au poivre. Eggnog. I love eggnog. I
Exactly.
wish eggnog were a year-round thing. Really.
Well, it can be, Ted. You can make it too.
Fuck that. I want to buy it in those little quart
I
containers.
know, I'm with you. I love that shit. I have a cup of it and I just hate myself for the rest
Oh
of the
yeah,
night.
because you feel so gross.
Yeah, but it's just so good. Yeah, and
Because
so
literally that you will put on twice the weight of the liquid. Just it defies the laws of physics.
so yeah, so your life is eggnog. I mean, that's got to mess with you. John Maloney, the writer comedian, just came out with a Netflix special since he's been out of rehab. But he talks about these famous people who came through SNL, Saturday Night Live, where he was head writer for years. And he talked about Mick Jagger. He says, I'm asked this. I mean, was Mick Jagger a nice guy? No, he was not.
Really? What was he supposedly like?
Well, they just say he says, you just had this for 50 years. He's had this magisterial lifestyle. So he would just say, yes, no. He said, I handed him a skit. He looked at it, he threw it at me, literally threw it at me. He goes, not funny.
Good for Mick, I say.
Well, my point, yeah, but living that lifestyle would get you to that. I mean, and that's where these guys were. I mean, Tucker Carlson more so than Don Lemon. Obviously, he was making tens of millions of dollars, and it has a sense of entitlement. But I can see getting to that point where you treat people like shit. I don't understand it. You and I have achieved a certain position in our profession. It's nothing anywhere close to those. I hope I was never that douchey.
No, I'm pretty sure you weren't.
I hope. Well,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
No, I mean, certainly. Look, I think it's super important to be nice to people who are working with you and for you. I think it's more important to be nice to them than to the people you work for. It's a very, that's how I was raised. My mother thought it was super important. She was a union woman. When she packed me off for college, her advice was, and I never forgot it, make friends in low places. And I knew what she, and it came in handy. Like, seriously, it was an Ivy League school. Most of my friends, it was the 80s. They're preppy. They had clothes from Brooks Brothers, monogrammed sweaters. And I was friends with the custodian. I got to tell you, there were times when I was the only person who could get the custodian to help me out in a pinch, and no one else could. And it's like, well, that's because I was nice to the custodian,
Well, whenever I'm at a sporting event or any event, and the guy who comes in who cleans the bathrooms, or the woman, I always make it a point to thank them. And
they're doing a far more important job than some fucking CEO.
Well, there's that. Yeah, of course, no doubt. I mean, it could be worse. They could be an editor.
You could do without editors or CEOs. You gotta have that bathroom cleaned. No,
you gotta have clean crappers, no doubt.
I'm not even kidding at all.
And the look on their faces, 9 times out of 10, is just sheer shock. It's like,
you acknowledge that they're alive.
Where they're like, wait, what? For what? I go, for cleaning this job. It's a tough job, and I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you. And they're like, you're welcome.
That's just, I would say good for you, but that's just being reasonable, really, honestly.
Well, it's just going, and it literally takes 3 seconds out of your day.
And most importantly, it is absolutely the right thing to do. I think so. Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson, what happens to them next? Where do they go or land, if anywhere at all?
Don Lemon, I think, can land any. He is truly a good, solid anchor. So he could be a news anchor. He could land on national stuff at MSNBC. But I think more likely he's going to end up at a New York or Chicago, LA, Phoenix, Houston, a top 10 market, to be a news anchor there. And
local television.
Well, yeah, but
this is Eyewitness News with Don Lemon.
Yes, exactly. A kitty in a tree. You won't believe what happens next. We're going to Ted Rall on the scene. Ted.
Yeah.
That's the only
Clovis, get your fucking furry ass down from there, you asshole.
So I think that's where he goes. Now, Tucker Carlson is a different story. He has, as I keep mentioning, he's heir to a fortune. So money's not going to be an issue to him. He could take the Scott Adams approach, the guy who did Dilbert, who literally exploded his comic strip and directed people towards his subscription site. You get 30, 40,000 people paying $3-5 a month. Do the math. That's a lot of money, and you're in charge. No one's going to fuck with you. No one's going to tell you what to do. You're going to be able to afford staff and boss them around if that's the direction you want to go. Everyone who talked about Carlson, in fact, the guest who was on with us on your show the other day mentioned that Carlson did this. He doesn't do this for money. He does it because he gets bored. He likes to do it. If that's the case, then he'll probably take a vacation and he'll land somewhere else. I mean, he's got his what's the site he owns?
The Daily Caller.
Yeah, the Daily Caller. You can add it doesn't have a strong video presence. It could get one.
Yep.
People are used to streaming now. I've been watching a show that streams through my phone. I mean, that's the age we live in now. So, I think that those are the likely places. But I mean, what do you think, Ted?
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I think your assessment about Don Lemon is especially smart, and I think something no one else is really talking about or thinking about. I think the conventional wisdom is that they're both too toxic to end up anywhere, but that's just not how America or the media work. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, remember Mike Barnacle? He was a columnist for the Boston Globe. He was discovered to have been a serial plagiarist. Nevertheless, he's a regular on Morning Joe on MSNBC, making good coin. Everyone's forgotten all about it. This is a country where, unless you've been raping small children, you are probably going to be able to land somewhere. And neither of these guys is accused of any kind of impropriety.
Yeah.
So basically they were just sort of like at the wrong place in the wrong time. I mean,
they're assholes.
Biggest sin. Yeah. I mean, so what? I mean, one interesting approach is you might end up like, what was his name? The guy who, Keith Olbermann, Keith Olbermann's like sort of has a lower profile, but he's still got a strong online presence. Dan Rather has a strong online presence on Facebook and elsewhere. In a way, it's kind of like they just want to keep in the mix. They probably saved a lot of money. If neither of them has a cocaine habit, they've got ample savings that they can live off the rest of their lives. Media is a fickle business. So if you're in it for a long time, you save. I mean, Tucker lives in Maine. I mean, even if he has an expensive house in Maine, how much is he spending? I mean, it's Maine. So, it's like with a low key lifestyle, you can do it out of your house. I mean, you just want to be in the mix. I think Tucker's got more options than Don, but
yeah, I think that's true. Well, Don could land anywhere. Let's assume Cleveland lands him. I mean, that would be a huge splash. So he could land in a market like that where he makes a 7-figure salary. It just seems to me, but you're right. I mean, Tucker has a far brighter future potentially, but I mean, I would not be surprised that if 10 years from now, Tucker Carlson not Tucker Carlson, I'm sorry, Don Lemon is named the anchor for the CBS station in New York. I mean, that would not surprise me.
He could land on, I could see him also ending up back on cable. I mean, hell, the thing is, CNN, they go through changes of personnel, right? The current president is relatively new. He's promised to introduce a less woke, more moderate approach. He could be out on his ear, and the new president who comes in 4 years from now could be someone who really wants to see, who regretted Lemon being let go and finds a place for him and says, why don't you come back?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a million options here. And so I don't mourn for either one of them, Ted. I'll be honest.
Let's do not cry for Argentina. All right. So when we come back, we will cry for this woman who had her house taken away by a Minnesota county. She owed $2,300 in unpaid taxes. They took her house, which was worth a lot more than that, and kept all the money that came out of it. Her case is now before the Supreme Court. Stay with us. Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
Scott Stantis from the right. We'll be right back.
Yes, we will.